No, we are on part 2 of the video. If you haven't checked out part 1, definitely do that. This is a 3-part video series, and in this video, we're going to be talking about a relationship, building a relationship with yourself, and repairing that relationship that you have with yourself.
So I'm going to preface this section of the video with this diagram. It's a yin and a yang to depict how mutually responsive the two entities are of self and other. So I want you to hold this image in your mind.
You want me to hold it up for our audience?
Yeah, they can see it.
I can just hold it.
So why do I see this as a yin-yang? Because oftentimes we have this idea that in a relationship, either we are too self-focused, like just focusing on your own self-interest, or we might be too other-focused, as in letting go of any kind of self-focus and be completely and unmitigatingly involved in the other and the other person's comfort and happiness. I think those are two extremes, and they don't necessarily have to be in this kind of adversarial, extremely intense position. Rather, I would say that in successful marriages or in successful partnerships, it's a dynamic tension and it's a mutually responsive tension between focusing on yourself and the kinds of things that you value, that give you happiness, that give you a sense of well-being, while also being interested and engaged and focused on being available for the other and being supportive in that role. So when both partners are capable and willing to both take care of themselves as well as each other, then I think you have kind of an ideal setup, where you're both accountable and responsible for yourself as well as accountable for the relationship and taking steps to protect and nurture your relationship.
So when I was growing up, my grandmother's generation, lots of people in my grandmother's generation will always say, if you focus on the other person, then the other person will focus on you. Is that necessarily true? Because I think in today's day and age, we've kind of come to a point where we're like, no, we have to focus on ourselves. We have to advocate. That's what we get told by our bosses. You have to advocate for yourself.
Right.
And is that different in a marriage?
Well, I think for us as Indians, we're kind of in this hybrid place. We have our Indian, tradition, but then we also have this kind of serious influence of the West. So there is this kind of hybrid culture of being both collective and individualistic at the same time. And I think like in a place like the US, the tension is between belongingness and individuality. And it's the same tension in other parts of the world too. There are some cultural adjustments, depending on which culture you're from. But I think in general, there is this kind of vying for attention between belongingness needs, like wanting to belong in a relationship, wanting to belong in a community, versus saying, okay, what am I going to do to advance my life? And I don't think they're both. It doesn't have to take this kind of either or place, but I think attending to both needs is as important. It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive.
So you would say that having a relationship with yourself or looking out for yourself or advocating for yourself would actually make you better.
Yes. So for example, let's say you've typically been interested in eating well, taking care of your health, exercising, not to become this complete kind of health nut, but that you have this as a value, as a priority for your life. But then your partner doesn't, is not into that. Or maybe money management is something that you're really focused on, that you are interested in saving money so that you have a good nest egg to avail of yourself, for your family during the time of retirement. But your partner is all about, let's spend the money now and live now. And that can be a cause for tension in the relationship, because it's not like the two are bad ideas, but how do you build how do you build some kind of agreement about accounting for both points of view, because neither of you are wrong about it. But some of this also comes from your own family of origin experiences that say, you really need to save so that you have a nest egg at the end. But then the other person might come from a family where the ethic was live now. You don't have to, cut short everything because of this fantasied future.
Right.
Right? So in that argument, how are you able to take care of each other's needs? So for some couples, it's not an insurmountable problem to have this kind of proposition, this kind of conflict, because they're able to see common ground.
Right.
Because maybe they have a shared vision that they both are interested in. And maybe one person needs to relax a bit, and maybe the other person needs to tighten up a bit. Right? Because in your marriage, you're also creating a hybrid culture of the kinds of family experiences you each come from, and then you're making up a third that is yours.
Right. You're defining boundaries in space.
Absolutely. And that conversation that may or may not have happened early in your marriage, definitely there's a possibility for you to revisit that in your 60s and 70s and even 80s. It's never too late, because how you had that conversation is where we want to talk about the element of repair.
Might be more difficult to go certain places in your 80s though.
Right. So, but when we talk about repair, it's about being able to take each other's point of view, not putting that person down or belittling that person, but rather to say, it's so hard for me to agree with you. And yet, if I put myself in your shoes, I can see where you're coming from. Because if I'd grown up in your family, I would have seen it the same way as you. But because I didn't,
There's no context.
There's no context for me. And if the other person can do the same for this person, to say, yeah, I can see where you're coming from, but I just don't like it. Because agreement is not, empathy is not the same as agreement.
So empathy is appreciating that person's point of view without necessarily saying that's it, that's the one we share is best.
But also, I think what empathy does is people like to feel understood. I get you. I get where you're coming from. And you know what? I'm willing to support you. I've got your back. Many times you ask couples who are in distress about what they really want, is they say, I just want to know that the other person understands where I'm coming from, and I know and I want to know that that I count, that I matter, and that this person has my back. So, coming back to what you were saying about, relationship with yourself. So that, we talked about repair, but part of repair is also about knowing how to soothe yourself. In relationships, sometimes when it's too other focused, the pitfall in that is that you don't take enough responsibility, or you don't cultivate enough awareness about what do I do to take care of me, in the sense, not in a kind of a selfish, self-involved kind of way, but that there are certain things that irritate you. There are certain things that you want your partner to do, but that person isn't doing. How do you manage your own irritation? How do you manage your, quick to flare to anger? Or how do you manage certain things? Like for some couples, it's like things just go silent. They're silently accruing. And then at some point, when nobody knows when that point is,
this is going to be a big
there's a huge conflict that erupts, and everybody is surprised about it, including you, because you didn't know that there was a trajectory building up. So knowing these kind of patterns, having some kind of method for yourself, and again, there's no one size fits all kind of method. For some people, things like meditation works because it's a way of taking care of yourself every day and having a practice. For some people, it's about spirituality and using faith and religion as a way to ground yourself and put some energy back into your body. For other people, it's about exercise that does it. For some other people, it's about these things and eating well, eating in a healthy way. So
In his family is also a big source of support for a lot of people.
right. So there are ways that, or for you, maybe it's like having that contact with friends that really is energizing and fulfilling for you because you like to feel connected to other people.
So this is independent of your relationship with
Right.
your spouse,
Exactly.
and you'll be doing this anyway.
Yeah. So for example, it's like saying, like some people say, I cook and I clean and I take care of the kids and send them out to school, and then it's like I don't have any time for me. When is my me time? For some people, that question doesn't even enter their mind because they never even thought that they require some me time. So like for me, for example, I can do a lot of things, but I need some time so that I can paint. Because painting and dancing is really important for me. If I don't do that, then I don't do well. So I have to attend to that.
Does your husband find that you don't do well when you're not painting or dancing?
Yeah.
Or is that something only you feel?
Mostly it's I feel, but I have a supportive husband, so he's going to kind of ride with the time more than other people.
What makes you happy, honey?
But yeah, even my kid knows that if I don't dance, I'm not a happy camper. Because for me, it's not just about fitness, but it's about an outlet for me to channel my expression. So I have to attend to that. So like that, there are some interests that if you cultivate would be really helpful, and actually it'll be in the best interest of your relationship, not only for yourself but for your relational health. And then in the next segment, we'll talk about the kinds of things you do with your partner, the kinds of things that are helpful,
That's the other
that
side.
are other focus that you do together as a partnership, because your partnership is also a unit.
And before we go, I just wanted to point out that Dr. George has led basics of meditation little video link in the description below. So if you are wondering if meditation is right for you, do check that out. And thank you for staying with us. There is a part 3 to this, so definitely join us for that, and we'll be talking about our relationship with our partner in part 3.